Hello everyone, welcome to our series, The Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In today's session, Great British Entrepreneur Awards founder Francesca James will speak with B Corp business leaders Pippa Murray, Joanne Chidley and Gareth Jones. Pippa, Joanne and Gareth will share top tips and advice on becoming fully certified, the application process, advantages and benefits that being a B Corp can have, and how this can positively affect your business. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these throughout the session. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Francesca James.
Thank you so much, Chloe, and thank you so much for joining us, Gareth, Joanne and Pippa, on our last Lightbulb session of 2020. One of the best activations and events series for me that has come out of COVID, so a pleasure to have you with us. It's been one we've been looking forward to. I think let's start off before we dive into the questions about becoming a B Corp with some introductions so that the audience can learn a little bit about who you are and what your businesses are about. So can I come to you first, Gareth?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Gareth Jones. I'm the founder of a company called Town Square, and we have community workspaces across the UK where our real interest is around how do we activate and inspire this kind of sense or this skill of entrepreneurship rather than just the kind of unicorn focused startup world. So yeah, we're really about how we build pride in local towns and especially around towns and communities that maybe don't have these kind of spaces rather than bigger cities. So yeah, we've got 6 across the UK now and a few more to come. And along with that, we run startup support packages, programs, things like that. So yeah.
Thank you. Joanne?
Hi everyone, and thanks Francesca for inviting us to this because I love this subject. My name is Jo Chidley. I'm the co-founder of Beauty Kitchen. We manufacture retail sustainable beauty products, so skincare, bath and body, and we sell direct to consumer through our e-commerce platform, but we also sell through national retailers like Boots and Sainsbury's.
Thank you. And Pippa?
Hi everyone, so I'm Pip, I'm the founder of Pippa Nut and we're an all natural nut butter brand. We have a selection of everything from almond butters right the way through to peanut butters and different flavours like coconut almond, so super delicious, all natural, no palm oil products that we sell through all the national retailers. We're in about 8,000 stores up and down the UK and have our own direct to consumer as well, which has been blossoming during COVID. So yeah, we've been going for about 5 years now and yeah, recently certified as a B Corp.
Fantastic. And as Gareth mentioned pre-call that his wife actually enjoyed some Pippa Nut for breakfast. So there we go, as many of us do, I'm sure. So what strikes me is on when you look into what a B Corp is and you look on the website, you know, the term using business as a force for good sort of sits front and center. But I guess I wanted to throw it to the panel to let the audience know, you know, what exactly is a B Corp? Let's start with the easy question. And I don't know who would like to jump in first. Shall I go to you, Gareth?
Yeah, sure. So the reason why we were attracted to B Corp is because we saw that we needed to provide some kind of sense of why our values are why we run a business, and especially to see people recognizing that business can be a force for good. So essentially a B Corp is a certification for private companies to prove through their processes, the policies, the way they do business, that what they do is responsible for society, for environments, and for a range of other stakeholders. But essentially it's focused on doing business as a force for good rather than just providing shareholder value. That's where it started from.
Fantastic. And Joanne, you mentioned that this is one of your favorite topics to talk about. So why did you at Beauty Kitchen decide to become a B Corp?
So when we started Beauty Kitchen, it was all about sustainability. But at the time, we didn't want to talk about sustainability because nobody was really that interested at the time. And I'm a big reader, and the circular economy, cradle to cradle, B Corp, all of these elements are for me the future of business. So even before we certified back in 2016. When we started the business in 2014, we already were thinking about how can we run this business. We're not a social enterprise, although a social enterprise can become a B Corp. So it doesn't matter what sort of type of business that you are, you can still become certified a B Corp. But what we wanted to do was, I very much don't necessarily always agree with accountants that we should always be focusing in on profit with any means. And really, when you read about B Corp or find out about other B Corps that are certified, there's a balance between the shareholder commercial financial side of the business, but there's just as much balance on the environment and just as much balance on the human element, or social fairness, a lot of the times it's called. And I think if you're a purpose-led business, which is really what's come to the fore, 10 years ago, it was pretty new. In the last couple of years, it's much more to the fore, and retailers and other businesses and consumers are now asking for it.
Thank you. Pippa, can I ask if you've got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, to Joe's point, I think it's sort of part of your DNA, and I think, or part of our DNA when we started the business, it just wasn't properly articulated. And I think what B Corp really enables you to do is provide yourself with a bit of focus, but also, also sets you on a journey. And I think the thing that I really love about being a B Corp and why it appealed to me is that it's this idea of continuous improvement. The fact that you really only, when you're certified, that's just the start. And really it's about continuously looking about how you can improve your business processes and think about the triple bottom line holistically, and not just at profit. And the triple bottom line is obviously people, planet and profit on equal footing. So I think, exactly right in saying that I think consumers need it, and I think it is the future of a business. So I think if you aren't moving this way in some form or another, whether it's certified as a B Corp or doing business, using business as a force for good, I think that in 20 years' time it will be the norm, and I hope it will be actually, because it shouldn't be a competitive advantage. It should be just the way that things are done, and hopefully that's the direction that it's going at the moment.
Fantastic. And I think that we've probably got a number of entrepreneurs on this call who've joined to really help themselves to navigate the process and learn from your experiences. But I'd like to start off by opening up to any one of you or all of you who'd like to answer, and ask, to what extent do you think that B Corps and other for benefit statuses can affect and benefit future economies?
Gareth? Yeah, sure. I mean, so yeah, I think echoing Pip and Joe's points, you don't become a B Corp because it's a tick box exercise. I think this is something that you become a B Corp because you're already a B Corp, and what you want to do is to make sure that that's kind of baked into the way you do things. And that's something which I think, exactly what's been highlighted. This is the way that we're all seeing, is that we don't have a choice, right? We all have to be this way. This is the way that business has to be, and this gives us a movement to be a part of. It's been this year especially, the number of calls I've been in where B Corp now is the default for companies starting, for companies looking at the way that they can better treat their staff and their processes, and that is super exciting. And the movement in the UK is growing. I think it's the second fastest growing movement of all the B Corp nations across the world. There are some high street names now which are raising the profile. Mentioned about using Pip and that this morning for breakfast. It becomes part of your process. But I think the really important thing from our perspective when we work with new companies and especially smaller and micro companies is helping them to realize that you can take on some of these habits and behaviors and learn from the community without necessarily having it's difficult, right? To become a B Corp is not an easy process. It's a big commitment, and it's not hard work because you want to do it. But for all companies to start to be a bit more B Corp, I think is a really important movement. And I was really excited by what you're saying, Fran, about how many people are really interested in this topic and learning from this webinar. We get it. That's the reason why we've invested in it, and the reason why we get it is because we have no choice. This is the only way.
Fantastic. Joanne, Pippa, anybody like to add anything there?
I mean, I think just adding to the movement, it's that sense of community. So, B Corp, when you think about it, this is not, although it can be used in a marketing sense, obviously. So if I take Boots as an example, they've recently segmented their website so that they have B Corp certified businesses on a particular part of their website. Waitrose support B Corp month to help raise awareness of those businesses. But it doesn't need to be large businesses. It's about encouraging a way of doing things. Yeah. So using either B Corps that are certified, thinking about being certified, there's a community that you can actually be part of. You don't necessarily need to be certified to be part of that community. You just need to have that mindset that you want to do something different and you're looking for guidance. And that's what I love. It's the transparency, it's the collaboration that happens. And I think, it is a better way of doing business. Pip talked about, competitive advantage. And yes, okay, everyone in business wants to have a certain advantage. But actually, if you do things in a certain way, you're still innovating to have that competitive advantage. But the way that you do business can be the most ethical way. And that's what I love really about B Corp.
Thank you, Jo. Pippa, can I come to you? Have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about B Corp in terms of, I guess, from a business perspective as well, is that, it does make sense both on the fact that, it is an investment. You're often investing heavily in your team or, environmental initiatives, but the kind of long-term ROI in it, I think, comes back around to you in terms of whether that's retention within your team or, being more attractive from a recruitment perspective or frankly, a lot of the initiatives that you can do to help improve your supply chain are often cost saving. So I think there's lots of kind of benefits and reasons for doing it. And that's not really the driver, obviously, because it's about how do you do business better. But there is an upfront investment, which actually I genuinely feel does come back in the long term. And I think it's about trying to set up systems and processes within your business that kind of embed and therefore are easy to kind of continue to kind of evolve and grow. But yeah, I think I definitely agree with what Gareth and Jo are saying about that particular point, that it is just a fundamental way of doing business and being part of a wider community that is growing, that you also can leverage and kind of use to support your growth as well.
Thank you. So obviously, sorry, Gareth.
Yeah, I was just going to say one more thing on that as well. And I think that's the distinction with B Corp is that you're still a competitive commercial business. And so this perception that it's a softer business doesn't come into it. It's just you are a proper business, right? We've all been in those conversations where when someone hasn't heard about B Corp, they might think that it means that you're less focused on being successful. Actually, the reason why we want to be more successful is so that we can have a higher impact and invest more back into our communities. And I think that's a really important distinction for B Corp compared to other social business models.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you said that that you were acting as a B Corp business, using business as a force for good before there was the certification. So, but if there are businesses and entrepreneurs who are listening in today, what are the first steps that they should take in order to get B Corp status and B Corp certified? And what does that entail?
I think for me, the first thing you need to do is speak to another B Corp. And you can do that either through, the type of industry that you're in. If you want to segment it, then you can do the size of the business, so you can definitely do it like that, because they can then speak about what happened for their journey, which just gives you an overview. And then secondly is that you go to the B Corp website, you have a look at the reports, you have a look at the questions, and you possibly do the initial assessment, which doesn't mean that you're necessarily committing to certification, but what it will do is it will quickly identify the gaps that you can work on, and you can then start the process. I'll let someone else add.
No, I completely agree. I think the B Lab have done an incredible job of making it a really easy tool to use, which is their B Impact Assessment. Like, it's, even if you don't end up going on to certify, but use it as a bit of a gauge on, like, what does good business look like? What are the various different things and initiatives I can do, or the barometer for what success looks like in certain areas? Like, it's just really interesting, and doesn't take a lot of time, and you can do kind of broad brush strokes as you're working through it to kind of get some idea of like where you're landing in terms of points and scoring. And then I think that just to build on that, I think if it's something that you're thinking, actually, I really do want to go after this, I definitely recommend getting sort of a champion internally. So someone that can really kind of hold the project and, you know, keep all the moving parts moving. Because, you know, we found that a lot of the things we were already doing, we just weren't necessarily tracking them very effectively. As an example, learning and development, we'd had budgets in place and people were going on courses. I think this is the nature of being a startup, but, you know, we weren't tracking like how much external learning were people actually doing on an annual basis. And that's just sort of small things you just have to start building into your ways of doing things, so that you're tracking. And what I love about this process is that it really reinforces that you can't improve unless you know your numbers and where you're going. And it sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but the data that kind of comes out of doing or at least some of the tracking and I guess the data room that you create effectively to certify really helps mean that when you're investing maybe more money in learning and development, you're really seeing like a tangible output, so you can start to actually sort of talk about these things as like, well, this is a meaningful investment and this is returning back. So get a champion internally so they can hold on to the project and kind of make sure that everyone's kind of moving to the kind of beat of the drum and have a target set, I guess, when you're aiming to complete everything. Because I think being a small company, this might sound bad, but it might fall to people's lower on their to-do list if they've got immediate actions that is just kind of keeping the lights on kind of business, and this, you know, setting up trackers or doing, you know, pieces of work might for them not necessarily rise high on their like urgent list, and actually creating a bit of urgency behind it is good. And making sure also, second to that, get a champion, but make sure people know what B Corp is. Do a bit of a induction, get buy-in from your team, like, you know, give a presentation to the team to kind of, so they understand why is it important that we're certifying. Because it's known within the UK, within certain pools of people, but it's still relatively low awareness, I think, as to what B Corp is. So I think it does need a bit of unpacking for people so they can understand and get their head around it.
And just to add to Pippa's point, everything that she's talking about, most of that resource is actually on the B Corp website. So it's not even as if you're starting from scratch. You actually, a presentation to your team, there's actually presentations on there that actually can, you know, help you communicate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Gareth, does that echo your experiences? Did you have an internal champion, and did you find other B Corps to talk to before you started the process yourself?
Yeah, massively. So there's a quite a well-known guy called Andy Middleton who runs TYF, which is an adventure company, and he is a massive champion for B Corps. And so yeah, he's been, well, not just on this journey, but personally as well, a massive inspiration and mentor for me. But it was that making it the only way we could think was really important. And I think, you know, picking up on the point about the impact assessment tool is a really useful tool to understand where you're at, where you can improve, but recognizing that, as opposed to maybe other certification programs, getting the certificate is not the goal. The goal is to start this process. And it gets quite competitive around people wanting to, you know, keep improving their score, and realizing maybe there are lots of things that you already do that you haven't recognized, that by locking in a process, you improve the way you do business, and you improve the way you communicate it internally. I think the other important thing from a community perspective is now there are B locals popping up all over the UK. So we're involved in B Local Oxfordshire Plus, and these are groups of B Corps that want to grow the movement, and so are willing to share their expertise, hold events, activities, things like that. So that's something which is worth looking out for if you are B Corp curious, I guess, is to find where there are communities, and by their nature, you know, B Corps want to share the word and invite more people in. So, you know, we've never turned anyone away who's asked for help and support on that.
Fab. And we've talked about data progress and tracking business activity. So what information do B Corps have to make transparent? What's the criteria there? What's the expectation?
So it very much depends on the business. So there's 5 areas that you need to go through. So there's governance, there's community, there's customer, there's environment, and I've now forgotten the other one.
Oh.
But it's all on there, and it depends on your business. So we're a female-led business. So and when we did the certification, there was only myself and there was 2 other employees, which was back in 2014. So there was only 3 of us. So it was me that did the initial certification, and there was lots of things that we scored really badly on. So even though we're a sustainable company, our environmental reporting was non-existent because it just wasn't part of what we did. But we scored highly on the fact that we were a minority in terms of the business being female-led, for example. So it doesn't matter what size you are, whether you're really large or really tiny, there'll be different measures that you will be surprised that you score better on, and then you'll probably be really surprised where you've maybe scored badly, because we assumed that environmental, because of the business that we run, we score highly, but because we weren't measuring it, there was no way for B Corp to measure it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything to add there?
Well, so we publish impact assessments based on what we do anyway within our communities, and I think it helps our teams to realize it's more of that kind of, I guess people call it like the North Star, right? People have a clearer sense on why we make decisions. We don't make decisions based on how profitable it is to do that thing, but it's about delivering impact. So, but we opt to publish those impact assessments and impact reports. There are steps that it becomes, I guess, part of our culture and part of our ethos is to be that way, and that everyone in the team appreciates that by doing that, then we can make decisions that are aimed towards that goal of community benefit rather than just profitability, because we know in turn that will grow the impact of what we do. So yeah, your impact assessment score is made public, and you've got a profile on online on the B Lab website. But yeah, it's changed the way that we do reporting on our impact in our communities.
Thank you. We've had a lot of questions in, so some of them are similar to what I was going to ask. So I'm going to lead with some attendee questions. This one's come in anonymous and says, the ethical, environmental, business benefits are incredibly clear, but do panelists find that it is worth the £5,000 a year investment to stay certified? It feels expensive to me.
I don't know where that person's getting the number from, unless they're a much bigger business. So we are going to turn over 3 million this year, and our because it's a sliding scale, whatever way that is, up, down, and ours is £1,500 a year. So I think that is really good value for money for what you actually get in terms of support. So I don't know what size of business that must be. And I think if you are a bigger business, you should pay more. That's part of being a B Corp.
Yeah, I do think the amount of resources that you get access to and that community, like there's a thing called the Beehive, which is a big portal, and you can join different forums, different groups, and it's knowledge sharing effectively. And it's not intended to be closed, but it obviously is like it's part of the offering as parting to be B Corp. And it just speeds up stuff. Like we're just about to complete our carbon footprint. Starting in January, we're going to start the process with the Carbon Trust. And we've been able to get like recommendations from other B Corps as to who they used, what was the process like, how much they spend. Like it's actually these sorts of things which can really help drive a bit of efficiency within your business and just clarify things when actually some particular topics, particularly around sustainability, are quite complex, and it provides you with solid foundations to be able to get answers to a lot of questions when you're, in my case, definitely not a sustainability expert. You get access to some real experts and people who are. So I don't think it's a huge amount to invest for what is, I think, quite a rich community.
And is your experience there the same, Gareth?
Yeah, and I think it's an investment. I think that's the way to treat it. It's not a fee, it's an investment. And like I think Pip made the point about, from a recruitment perspective alone, it is a massive attractor. People know straight away that this is a company they want, or this is a mission they want to join with. And I think, if you look at the money you'd spend on certification, that's not so much as the contribution you need to make in terms of your team and your resource to securing it and making it a focus. But if it is a focus, then really it's about your investment is going into making the movement grow. And if we all buy into that and believe that, then it should be a fraction of what your turnover is, or what your how else you're investing, or how else you're spending, because it just, like has been echoed, it pays back over and over and over in spades. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got a question here from Cheyenne, which I'm going to read because it's a slightly longer one. Question to the panel: where do you stand on B Corp enterprises utilising partners or platforms directly or indirectly, with Amazon being the most obvious, that are not as ethical as themselves? Is this acceptable for the greater good and a price worth paying, or does it counter the very ethos of the B Corp?
I don't mind stepping in here because we think about it all the time. So if you want to be part of the circular economy, and B Corp is really part of that, unfortunately, most businesses are set up in a linear way. We know that. The only way to change those businesses is to assimilate from within. And the power that we grow, so if we look at just the B Corp globally or in the UK, the growth that's happened there, these other businesses that are not working in that same way will have to change. There will be demand, not just from business, but from consumers, which will impact their own commercials and will make them change. Whether they're changing for the right reasons is up for debate. But I do believe that you can't ignore what's already going on. You have to be able to engage with those businesses, even if you don't agree with how they run their business.
I think it's such an interesting question, isn't it, in terms of morals? But I think it is about trying to make, sustainable business, or businesses that are using business as a force for good, mainstream, and that does unfortunately mean that you do have to work with some of those bigger businesses that are just not set up in that way. And maybe a business like Amazon, to change their ways of doing things is going to take a huge amount of shift, but by at least kind of owning your part and your business and how you operate, you're doing your part. And I think this is probably linked, but kind of also a bit of a build on that, which is I guess there are lots of different ways that you as a business can also do good. And I think sometimes one of the things that I found challenging about B Corp is that there are so many different things you could focus on in terms of community or workers or environment. And I think you need to focus in on what is it that your business is going to stand for. And yes, that might mean working with Amazon, but you might be, reducing slavery within the cocoa supply chain as an example. And it just being really clear about what is your ethics and standpoint as a business, and where you're focusing a lot of your energies to deliver on your purpose. That's not to say give up and don't try and make things better across the board, but you do need to focus in on what your business stands for, and therefore what it is that you're delivering upon.
Yeah, I think you need to pick your battles, right? And for anyone who is building a business, we all know that there are a million things that could destroy our business in any moment. And I think sometimes it's about picking the battles and realizing where it's worth investing your time. And being able to do the best impact you can with yourself. But that's not to say you ignore. We had a conversation as a board and as a team over the summer about our SDG, what we're committing to publicly as our SDGs. And what we decided was actually that shouldn't be on the front page of our website, because for most of our users, it's not our job to educate people on that, but there'll be people who want to know that. And so as long as we've got that as a core driving force within what we do, we're not just shouting about we do this because of this. It's not, people call it virtue signaling, right? We do it because it's our mission. And we're clear on that. We're not doing it just to try and convince people we're doing it. I think this is the real difference. It's not tick box, it's doing it because that's the way that we do things.
But and just final point, I think, is that even by the fact that it comes up as a conversation or a point is in itself indicative of the fact, if it's coming up within your business, Joe, that's because you're looking at it from the lens of people, planet and profit also being part of that dynamic. And it's they all have to work hand in hand, and I love the fact that now when we have challenges in our businesses or question marks as to whether or not we do certain things, we are taking it on a lens of all three of those things and saying, it's not going to work if we don't make any money, if we all just do it, everything's for just the planet, but then equally we can't screw over the planet just to drive further profit. And it's this lovely tension that I think makes your business more interesting, and also just, I guess it's the difference between a business that would just focus on profit, because they wouldn't even entertain that question in their company, because it would just, it just wouldn't be part of the dialogue.
Thank you. So I think the overwhelming message, obviously, we're getting from you guys today is that it's not just about the certification, it's how you behave as a business. But Josh does ask, what are the main challenges that you faced when it came to getting certified, and how did you overcome them?
I think our main challenge, I said it earlier, was just about focus. Like, where was it that we wanted to focus our energies? The second biggest challenge, I think, was that, for instance, we now are just about to start completing our carbon footprinting. Quite a lot of the points within B Corp are linked to kind of understanding and tracking what you are doing from a carbon perspective, or cradle to grave kind of understanding of the life cycle of your product. And that was something we chose to kind of postpone a little bit. But I do think, there is some upfront investment and costs associated with some of those certification or some of those footprinting. That was a bit of a barrier for us when we were initially certifying, in terms of resource and cash effectively to do that piece of work. So we focused on other areas within our assessment, with a view in the long term to look at how we could sustainably improve our business by investing in certain different initiatives, or like I said, tracking of our carbon footprint. So I think that was a bit of a barrier for us. And I think fundamentally, when it comes to supply chain, we're, as a business, operate to try and reduce waste anyway throughout our supply chain, or to make our supply chain more effective. But to make really fundamental shifts in our supply chain, whether it's improving the way that almonds are grown, and more using agroforestry as an example, those long-term projects, they just take a long time to embed and to make sure you're informed and doing them in the right way. So I think it's what's this phrase? It's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, some things are just complicated and long term, and if they're not already within your business, you just have to accept that they are going to take longer, and not to rush them into action if you need to take time to consider. So that was some of the things that I was sort of running up against, that some of our things that we hadn't put in place in our supply chain yet weren't going to help us in the initial certification, because they just would take too long.
Any slightly different experiences there, Gareth or Joanne, or anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I think so this year especially, we've been really looking at systems change in a broader sense. And as you delve deeper into systems change, you realize that, to affect those systems, so talking about affecting Amazon, there are levers that, you need to kind of move along to get to that position where you can have that kind of change. And I think B Corp is one of those movements that can do that. But from a implementation, it did take the whole team being involved at different times. It did take a leader who was willing to prioritize these tasks, even when everything else is on fire. And it does take a lot of providing evidence, getting the paperwork in place, putting in these processes, and making sure they're there. But that's helped us to achieve other, quality accreditation certifications and things as well. So that's why I keep saying investment. It has to be seen as an investment, but it does require a lot of focus. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think the smaller you are, the easier it can be, because it's a cultural shift. Yeah, it means that if there's only 3 or 5 of you, then the culture is still that kind of family kind of feel to it. So the changes you maybe need to implement when you're going through certification, although you've maybe got the paperwork element of it, which can be, time consuming, it's easier to implement that culture shift at the earlier stage. The larger the company, the more people you have, so the more different cultures you have that you have to bring together, which is a much bigger project and a much bigger investment in time. However, coming back to both, Gareth and Pip's points, this is around giving you identification of gaps, and then looking at what gaps do you think that you can fill in sort of immediately to get the certification that will get you over that score line, and what ones that you think, actually, I didn't realize we had such a gap there, but that's something I can then work on, for the recertification in 3 years' time or 6 years' time, whatever.
whilst you mentioned that, we talk about recertification. So what is the recertification schedule?
So it used to be 2 years. It's now 3 years, and we are just going through it at the moment, which is fun. But the good news is, as I said, our big gap was environmental reporting the last time. We've been working on that over the last 3 years, and our score has jumped considerably because of that. It's still to be fully audited, so I don't know if we will obviously pass, but I'm fairly hopeful that we will be. The other thing with recertification is, because you've already gone through it once, it was easier, but there is changes. So, there's the link to SDG goals. There's some companies that there's a list of industries that if you're in that industry, you can't become a B Corp. And one of the ones that's been added recently is if you manufacture bottled water, which I think is, sort of interesting. And then one of the other things that they are reviewing at the moment, which again, B Corp review themselves as well, and how they can stay ahead and future-proof. There's a big focus on the climate emergency, and that will definitely become a part of the score. It'll be a much stronger part of the scoring system going forward. And again, that's what I quite like about it, is that not only do you get better as a business, but B Corp are striving to better themselves as a certifying body as well, because they're multi-attribute, but they need to make sure that they're staying ahead to ensure that they have those equal weightings that still work.
Thank you, Jo. Gareth, earlier you mentioned about local B local groups. Susan asks, where would she find details of those?
Actually, I don't think there is a central landing page for all the B locals just yet, but I think the best bet is to tweet B Lab UK, and they can let you know details, because they each have local leadership teams and things like that. But yeah, I don't think there's a single platform at the minute, because it's only in the last couple of months where they've started to all emerge. I just wanted to make one other point as well. We've used SDGs, and maybe people who are watching this will know all about SDGs, but in case people don't, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are 17 goals, which are really, chances are you are aware of them, but I'd really recommend having a look at that as well, as a toolkit, because maybe that's some jargon that we use internally, which is part of our world.
That's really useful, Gareth. We've talked about, we touched upon cost. There's quite a lot of questions coming in about how much it costs. So obviously there's the cost that being certified costs, but could you estimate the costs in measuring and communicating your social impact in terms of time and cash, if it's something that you're willing to share? But what does that look like in terms of an investment for you in terms of time?
It depends on the size of your business. So there's a couple of initial costs. So B Corp pending is £250. So if you want to go through the assessment and you actually get a logo that all the time that you would need to go through, it probably would take you less than a day. If you focus, it would probably be a few hours. You've then got the lowest certifying amount is £500 for a sort of micro business, a small business. Again, if I think back to when it was only 3 of us at Beauty Kitchen, it was me that did it, and we did the certification over a period of 12 in there. So if I had to quantify it, I would probably say at that time it maybe took me, 5 working days, of one person. But the other guys, you've got some larger organizations, so I don't know how long that would take.
Okay. I think that's a really hard question to quantify, and if I'm really honest, I don't think we really ever put a number to it when we did it. The total process from start to finish took about 18 months, but we weren't working on it all the time. You chip away at it. I'd say that each person had 1 or 2 tasks that they had to do, but the ops team had a lot to work through. And I guess it just depends on how set up your systems are originally. So yeah, taking that waste example, like tracking how much waste hit landfill, you might already be tracking it, you might not be, but if you haven't, then you need to set up a database to be able to understand if that's something, and you need to evidence it to B Corp when you certify. And then likewise, cost, it will be totally dependent on what changes you make. As an example, we decided to move to become a London living wage employer, so we had to change some people who weren't, you know, being paid that in the lower brackets of our team. So it's all choice, it's all down to you as to how much you're willing to invest. And perhaps you're a business that actually is very centered on environmental practices, or have a purpose, a very clear social purpose within your business, i.e. I know businesses that make chutneys out of waste produce, as an example. So it all depends. You'll get more points, as an example, if you have that as part of your almost like center for being as an organization. So it just depends how much you've already done and what kind of business you are. And that's also kind of a bit like why you need to think of it as a journey, because no one can afford to make all the changes that they need to make in a business overnight. It's going to take years. It will never be done, but it will take years to be able to be at a point where you think, I'm really starting to make some significant steps, because there is investments up front, like I said, which hopefully in long term pay back. That's a really unhelpful answer to a question. Very loose. I'm being a politician and avoiding the actual number. Gareth, do you have a number?
I did no number, right? But I'd echo that thing about it. For us at that time, it wasn't a quick process. I'm sure, you know, things are improving, but it took us, kind of 15, 18 months to get through. But I think like the thing for us was that we have someone who does our commitment to equality and diversity, or all of our quality-based activity is the responsibility of one member in the team, and they're especially good at, you know, corralling everyone or herding cats, I guess. So it became part of their role to do this. And so maybe it was a half a day, a week or so of little bits, but it wasn't just B Corp focused. It was broader, making us, you know, a better company, or having better processes. So yeah, I don't think you could put a number, but maybe some people could, but I don't think we could put a number on it. And some things were direct and some things were indirect. So yeah.
I mean, I think just mulling that over, I think if you think that it's entrepreneurs that are on this webinar, if you think how long it takes for you to get a product to market, or how long it took you to start your business or scale it, or those big long-term objectives, then that's really your measure, I think, of how long it would take you to go through B Corp maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've got questions still coming in, but I'm really conscious of time. So I'm gonna, there's two, one that I think will be quick, and one that I'm hoping that you might be able to hang on in a minute or so longer for. But the first one is, do you have any recommendations for good resources or books? Just working through my application, the more I'm working through, the more I want to read. Is there anything that was really useful to you guys?
I mean, you've got the B Corp Handbook, which has got 2 editions. You've got Cradle to Cradle and anything in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website. There's a lack of real research out there with regards to B Corp, although there's definitely more research coming out.
There's also, I agree, there's not loads specific, but there's also, last year B Lab did a big conference where they invited all B Corps, but also about, I think it was half and half those that weren't certified, and all on their YouTube are all those talks recorded. So they might be a nice way to kind of be inspired, is go and watch some of those. And, you know, there was people from Bulb talking about diversity and inclusion within their business. So you kind of get, I guess, a bit more of what we're talking about today, but from B Lab themselves.
Fantastic, thank you. And sorry, Gareth, were you going to add there?
I'll probably, what I'll suggest is I'll put it out on social media, but I think it's more around the mindset that gets you focused, as opposed to helping you get through the B Corp process. But yeah, I'll put some out on socials.
That would be fantastic. And we've dropped your LinkedIn profiles in the chat as well. And to end, I think this is a really appropriate one. It's coming anonymously, but do you think B Corp certification will becoming an expectation as we move forward?
I don't think it'll ever become the default, but I would hope that government policy shifts so that there are B Corp behaviours that become the default. I was with Amit from Bulb. I was part of a number 10 group, and this is one of the things that we were trying to get across, was that as part of your annual report, there is some kind of impact statement within that as well. And I think this is the way I don't think every company should have to become a B Corp, but every company should think and act like a B Corp. I think that's a much more inclusive way of doing it.
I think as the circular economy becomes more the norm, and we know that that is the direction that governments and other businesses are taking, I think that the B Corp principles, whether you're certified or not, will just become part of how you do business going forward.
Yeah, I guess final build on that, I guess, is I do think, you know, a big part of B Corp is committing to net zero by 2030, and regardless of whether or not B Corp is what everyone abides by or kind of certifies as, I think that will become, I would be surprised if businesses haven't got some form of target around net zero in the coming 2 to 3 years, because of the urgency behind the climate crisis. So yeah.
Well, look, I think we could possibly go on for the whole of the afternoon, but you guys are incredibly busy, and thank you so much for giving us your time. If there's anything that you'd like us to share via email with the attendees, any links, please do let us know. If not, we know that they can find you on social media. And thanks so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us this afternoon.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
What a great session for our community. Thank you, Pippa, Joanne, Gareth and Francesca for joining us today. The Lightbulb sessions will be returning for Series 2 on Thursday, the 21st of January 2021. Keep an eye on your emails for the announcement of future sessions. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this coming today. You can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com or by clicking on the link in the comment section. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Pippa, Jo, Gareth and Francesca.